ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today to another edition of Room for Discussion.
As authoritarian regimes gain ground across the globe, the story of Belarus stands as a powerful testament to democratic struggle and resilience. At the forefront of our movement today is our guest, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya.
Becoming a presidential candidate in her own right following her husband's imprisonment during the 2020 elections, she's built a base of sustained support and has been traveling in exile since then to create support for her cause.
Today, we'll discuss her personal journey, her vision for Belarus, as well as the broader dynamics in the region and beyond. Please join us in giving a warm welcome to Ms. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. Thank you once again for joining us today. It's a true pleasure for us. First, we wanted to ask you that you've said many times that you're fighting for not only for democracy in Belarus, but also for the very existence of your country. What exactly does this mean, and what does Belarus personally mean to you?
So first of all, hello everyone. I'm so glad that you found time to come to listen to me. It means that what's happening in neighboring countries to you is important for you, and I think really that Belarus is part of European family of countries, and people of Belarus want to return to this family. We at the moment deprived of this right. Belarus is first of all, it's my homeland. I really want my country to be developed economically, to see how people in Belarus enjoying their lives, not just surviving. Because, in comparison with other European countries, we are in rather bad position. I would just want to remind you the history of our region, that after the collapse of Soviet Union, for example, we as Belarus and Poland were at the same point of economic development. Maybe Belarus was even more developed because we had so many big enterprises, and 30 years passed, and now Poland is one of the advanced economies in Europe, and Belarusian economy is at the initial point. Nothing has changed, in Belarus. We stuck in time, and I think that new generation grew up in Belarus who don't have this nostalgia of Soviet Union times, and they want to be like Europeans. We want to see that our pensioners enjoying their free time in cafes, but in Belarus, pensioners are surviving. We want more opportunities for Belarusian young generation. We want more investments into our country because we really have wonderful nation. Hardworking people, very disciplined, law obedient, and I want my country to be reliable neighbor and partner for European Union, not just we at the moment, threat, source of threat and blackmailing, because Lukashenko seized power in our country and just don't have a possibility for Belarusians to develop, and this is what Belarusian people showed back in 2020, that we want changes. We are fed up with this dictatorship, and we want to move forward. But it's so difficult, really, to dismantle 30 years dictatorship. But Belarusian people are ready for this. We are not giving up our fight despite all these, repressions we have in the country. And it's so important now in new geopolitical context, in the context of the war in Ukraine, to explain to people in European countries that you are enjoying democracy. You take it for granted. You think that it will never change, but democracy is rather fragile because dictators, they're using very ugly methods of influencing your minds, of poisoning your minds with their narratives. And just I want to urge democratic nations that you have to care about what you have, but also help those who are in the front line of fight against dictatorship.
We'll come back to that point about the fragility of democracy later. Right now, how do you see your own role in this fight?
You know, my path in politics was very unexpected. You know, for me, I never prepared for this. I don't have proper education for this. I call my path absolutely accidental because I was ordinary woman, housewife who was bringing up children, and it was my husband actually who became popular blogger in Belarus. He just was visiting city after city, just talking to people, just asking their opinion. Believe me, nobody never in Belarus asked people's opinion. What do you think of the country? What maybe you want changes? And he became very popular, and people asked him, maybe you will try to become president. Of course, we understood the situation that Lukashenko dictator, so on and so forth. But my husband just agreed, and he declared this, that he wants to participate in next elections. And the next day he was detained. He was detained by this regime, and I just at that moment I felt that I need to do something for my husband, because what he was doing was very important for the people. And just I went to Central Election Commission and gave my documents, instead of my husband.
Was this already a plan before you?
We have never discussed this. My role at that moment was to take care of my husband. I was so scared for him because we knew that political opponents of Lukashenko were disappearing very easily. But the first step I made out of love to my husband. I didn't think about scale of my maybe future path. I was just did it for him, but it was so unexpected then that so many people joined this pre-election campaign. Two more alternative candidates appeared on the scene, and Lukashenko detained one more of them. One more managed to escape the country. So it was like new page of our history. Suppressed people in Belarus saw each other. We realized that we all together want something new, because for many years we were sure that I'm alone in these thoughts. I want changes, but I don't see anybody else, who want the same. And now, just in the moment, we saw that we are millions of people, and this feeling of shoulder, it was very important at that moment. So I, according to all the alternative countings, Lukashenko lost elections. I just won the elections, but because Lukashenko didn't agree with this, and he unleashed the most brutal terror against Belarusians who went to the streets peacefully to demand free and fair results of the elections. And since then, for 4 years already, 4.5, these repressions have never stopped. And I had to leave the country because of threats from the side of the regime and continue my path already in exile.
You've become this symbol of democratic resistance. How does it feel to handle the weight of such responsibility?
Honestly speaking, I hadn't a clue about politics. It was I had to learn so fast, how a European Union is structured. What is the difference between European Council and Council of Europe? What parliamentarians are doing, and what's the difference, from the government? No, I honestly speaking that, it wasn't usual knowledge of ordinary, Belarusian person. But first of all, I felt huge support of Belarusian people. I felt how our wonderful nation was ready to self-organize. You know, they helped me so much. They were so active on the ground. You know, our peaceful protests, they continued many weeks in a row. We felt huge solidarity from our democratic allies from democratic countries. Maybe the reaction on the situation in Belarus wasn't very fast, not very active. And for example, the first sanctions against Lukashenko's regime because of the brutality were imposed only in 6 months after the beginning of our revolution, and the time was lost. So my first lesson of the politics was that there are words and there are actions. So we heard a lot of words of solidarity, words of condemnation of this regime, but actions were made much later. So, and you know, for 4 years we managed to build alternative institutions of power in exile. Why in exile? Because it's impossible to do anything active in Belarus, because for these 4 years all the alternative free media have been ruined in the country. All NGOs have been liquidated. All political parties, alternative parties, you know, also have been liquidated, and leaders of these parties, like possible opponents of Lukashenko, or in prison or in exile. Since 2020, at least 500,000 of Belarusians had to flee the country because of repressions. It's activists, it's businessmen, doctors and teachers, you know, high-profile specialists. Because of repressions, because so many people were on the streets, so many people wanted, you know, peaceful change situation in the country. So it's not easy path, you know, for me personally. I learned a lot, of course, but it's this path full of challenges. And I think that, again, you know, people who live in democracy, they can't even imagine how it is, you know, what is dictatorship? Because when I'm talking to people, they ask, okay, and what is parliament doing? Why they don't, you know, dismantle Lukashenko? He just only, like, he was only president. You just can, you know, can vote against him. And people don't understand that we are using the words like parliament, government, and, you know, political parties that are suitable for democratic world, but they like misused by dictatorship, and we have to explain, you know, this to the world. And it's also one of my work to keep to rediscover Belarus actually for different nations, and to keep Belarus high on the agenda, because attention span, believe me, is very short, and we have to work hard to keep like Belarus in the minds of not only politicians but also like of ordinary people.
We are curious to hear, how did public mobilization in 2020 compare to previous years, such as 2010 when Andrei Sannikov was the main opposition figure?
So just to give some context, in Belarus, every no one elections, okay, let's say so, have been recognized as free and fair by international organizations. And every 5 years there were opposition uprising in Belarus. The difference between the previous one and uprising of 2020 was in the amount of people. In previous years it was like, you know, a couple of thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people, and back in 2020 it was already millions. I think it's because first of all we started to use internet. You know, the information is spread momentarily, you know, among population, because in previous years it was leaflets, it was newspapers, maybe telephones and nothing else. And now just you put post that we are gathering this date, this time, and millions of people on this spot. So, and again, Lukashenko didn't catch this moment because he stayed in the past, where only leaflets, you know, take place, and he like lost this connection, you know, to Belarus, and he's like previous generation. But also, as I said already, new generation grew up who saw Europe, who saw how our country can look like after changes, and a huge amount of Belarusians have never been abroad. How they can know how life can be better if they see only propaganda on TV, where propagandists spread these narratives about rotten West, that NATO is a threat to Belarus and all this stuff. And and people felt huge solidarity against repressions, against brutality of the regime, because in 2020 our peaceful uprising was suppressed so brutally. There were so many beaten people, women, men, adults, like pensioners, and people were shocked. People who have never been involved in politics, they saw the real face of dictatorship. They realized that, look, something is wrong. And after 2020, Belarusians became as politicized as never before, and this is continuing.
After the 2020 elections, you mentioned that previous elections were not seen as free and fair, but you saw an increased amount in particularly Western support for the Belarusian cause. How do you perceive and experience this sort of support from abroad?
Okay, let's say a couple of words about previous years. It seems like the elections were not recognized as free and fair. There were always political prisoners in Belarus, but years passed, and democratic world, though they condemned brutality of the regime and fraudulent elections, they just returned to business as usual after some time, and it was like vicious circle. They trade off with political prisoners, lifted sanctions that were imposed before, and it was like years and years after. And this is actually the strategy of dictators. They know that new politicians will come who maybe haven't been with the people at the moment of their uprising, and dictators think that maybe the next politician will be more loyal to Belarus, will be possible to make deal with him, and it happened year after year. But in 2020 became irreversible for this dictatorship, because our democratic partners maybe saw that at this moment, Belarusians are really determined. It's real desire of people to change the situation in Belarus, to dismantle dictatorship, and since then, we see consistency in the policy regarding Belarus. We see that all those restrictive measures on Lukashenko's regime, like sanctions, like political isolation, policy of non-recognition remains the same. And instead, our democratic partners strengthen their ties with democratic forces. We really became strong as a movement, as society. We formalized relationship with many countries, including the USA, Canada. We have agreement with European Union, with the European Parliament. We formalized relationship with national parliaments and government. And this is about recognition. So our democratic neighbors now see us as partners for communication, not Lukashenko's regime. And this is the process of delegitimization, not on the paper only. In resolution.
Did 2020 mark a turning point in that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, for Belarusian people, because for 4 years of brutal repressions, and huge propaganda, Lukashenko with his regime didn't manage to persuade people to forget or forgive what is happening in Belarus. Didn't manage to turn the page of our history, and we don't need to explain to Belarusians why Lukashenko's regime has to be ruined, why we need to build new country. But for our democratic partners, we always have to remind why Belarus is important. Now, in broader geopolitical context, now it's not only about brutality and repressions and actually democracy in the country, it's more about security at the moment.
After the 2020 elections, the Coordination Council was established to facilitate a democratic transition of power in Belarus, and you obviously played a central part in its creation. Could you explain to us what this institution stands for and what is its place within the broader opposition?
Since 2020, we actually promote the idea that we have to have dialogue or negotiation with this regime, because it's our country. We will have to live together in the future. And the Coordination Council was created as platform for dialogue. We wanted to see our opponents there and to talk about releasing of all political prisoners, about transition of power in the country. But all the participants of that coordination council were declared as extremists or terrorists. Many of them now in prison. So our steps towards friendship, towards reconciliation, they were rejected by this regime. And since then, the situation is only worsening. Because in exile, I realized, the moment when I realized that our fight is not sprint, it's marathon, it might take some time, I decided to build alternative institutions of power. So now we have clear structure, we have Office of President-elect, we have United Transitional Cabinet as proto-government, where my representatives are working in different directions, like in real government, and we have Coordination Council, it remains the same. It's like proto-parliaments where people are discussing different problems, come to me with the solutions, and we are trying to work together. What is extremely essential in our work that we are cooperating very closely with civil society. We are not just, politicians, civil society, something there, human rights, doing their job. We are in constant coordination because we are movement. We, all of us, want to change situation in Belarus, and it's good cooperation. We are working with media together. Because now it's, as I explained to people, it's not time for competition. Of course, we have wonderful people who might be future pride politicians in Belarus, but now we are stand together, to bring nation to the moment of real political competition where everybody can, promote himself or herself. But now we are like one fist, have to dismantle the regime.
I can understand standing in support with each other is a noble goal, but I can imagine it's difficult to organize opposition forces both domestically and abroad. Do you find any fragmentation within the opposition?
So,
if so, how do you reconcile these differences?
look, we are actually meeting many challenges. First of all, we, as I said, at least 500,000 left Belarus, and now propaganda trying to persuade Belarusians who live in the country that these are traitors. They left Belarus, so they are not Belarusians anymore. And you are here, yes, you're in a big jail, you are our slaves, but you are like real Belarusians. And our task is to combine those who are in exile with those who are in Belarus, and it's one of my priority not to live in this exiled bubble, but to have constant communication and coordination with Belarusians on the ground. So first of all, we are talking to Belarusians through media, through alternative media who managed to restore the broadcasting from abroad. We just, explaining what's happening. We are proposing alternative to Ruski Mir, to Russian world in Belarus. We explaining how our country will be without Lukashenko with the new democratically chosen government. I'm myself communicating personally with people. Anybody can call me in particular hours, and I communicate to people on the ground. And I really feel huge energy from people in Belarus, because it seems like this repressive machine is working very effectively, because people are really living constant fear, but they're eager to do something. Now Belarusians in Belarus, like in safe mode, we are preparing for for proper moments. We call it window of opportunity. But I ask people, don't sacrifice yourself in vain at the moment. Keep this energy inside. Those who are in exile, we can be more vocal, and we have to talk and to work for ourselves and for those who live in Belarus at the moment. Of course, there are many subjects for debating, for discussion. But finally, we come to conclusion that it's good to have many opinions, but we have our goal. And I understand the fatigue of this feeling of fatigue, some frustration from the situation, because 4 years of fight, of repressions, when you in constant fear for your relatives in Belarus, it might be exhausting. And people are sometimes looking for who is guilty, who is the most responsible. As I always say, it's all our responsibility, to bring Belarus back to people. Don't just get rid of the idea that one person is responsible, because it was always Lukashenko. I'm in here, you obey. I'm deciding everything. And democracy, it's about responsibility first of all. Everybody can contribute into the fight, and just do what he or she can on his or her place. And that's why we are trying to solve difficulties, to work together, coordinate actions, just to avoid any disagreements.
Another core feature of democracy is disagreement. So we would like to ask you, what some sorts of criticism have you faced since taking on this leadership position?
No, the main issue that people are discussing, and I think that only Tsikhanouskaya didn't manage to do this, is to release political prisoners. We have thousands of people behind bars. It's thousands of relatives who are waiting, their beloveds, their friends, from prisons, and this is the most painful topic for people. And among those political prisoners is my husband, and the biggest thing I want to do, the most I wish, is to release my husband and other thousands of people.
You always carry around a photo of your husband.
Yeah, he's like my personal motivator, because sometimes I'm also exhausted, I'm overwhelmed with the duties, and when I'm exhausted, I just put myself in the place of those who are behind bars, and they rely on us. They only hope is on our activities, that we will not give up and will not betray all those who sacrificed their freedom actually, for us. So he's always with me, and so the main blame is she hasn't released political prisoners. And again, you have to explain, look, my dear Belarusians, it's our common obligation. I'm doing what I can in my position, but we are activists, There are so many points how we can keep Lukashenko's regime in stress. We have to look for possibilities how to split elites, how to get inside information from Belarus, how to make sure that Belarus sounds on international arena. I became a politician, accidental politician, and I think that we really advanced a lot in political recognition of democratic forces. 4 years passed, and I remember how back in 2020, some people told, now nobody will meet Tsikhanouskaya in a couple of months. Everybody will forget about Belarus, nobody will care, and it's our job that the world cares about the country. And you see that we are visiting many democratic partners, leadership, and the interest is still there, and it's our hard job, to keep this interest high. It's the job of our diasporas in every country, to keep attention on Belarus. Honestly speaking, in Netherlands we have one of the most organized and active diasporas all over the world, and I'm so grateful to everybody who is contributing to this fight. Because I really hear sometimes the word fatigue from our democratic partners and people, fatigue of the war in Ukraine, fatigue of Belarus, but I can't think about fatigue, because tell about fatigue to people behind the bars, or soldiers in cold trenches who are defending Ukraine now. They don't have right for fatigue, neither can we. So that's why I also just want to explain day after day about the importance of standing firmly with those who are against dictatorship, because dictatorship, like Russian imperialism, they threaten not only Belarus and Ukraine at the moment, they are threatening democracy as it is. Believe me, if not to stop enemy now, where they will knock your doors very soon. What are you going to do then? If you show your weakness and weakness of democracy, so how are you going to defend after this?
We'll come back to the point about Russia and the broader dynamics in a little bit. Now I'd like to ask you about other opposition candidates in the past. Andrei Sannikov, who we mentioned earlier, has expressed deep skepticism about your role in the opposition. He was quoted in 2019 saying that you and your team are, quote, imposters who call themselves leaders of the Belarusian opposition. The real opposition does not recognize them, and I do not recognize them. How do you respond to this kind of harsh language? Who is the real opposition?
Look, real opposition, real democratic movement is all the people who want Belarus to become free, independent, and democratic. And Mr. Sannikov, who actually, I don't know why, he's criticizing me a lot, but it's so easy to criticize, honestly speaking. It's much more difficult to stand nearby in one team and fight together. So I don't want to judge anybody because different opinions are important in our fight. But I really sometimes don't understand, and it sometimes even offends me that just people criticizing without proposing. If you think that I'm not managing, if I do wrong, or maybe you think differently have to be done, so let's discuss this. Stand together and we will just organize fulfillment of your ideas. But usually it stops on critics and nothing goes on. But it's like strange to have a position in a position. But I think that it's only plenty of opinions and meanings. Everybody is in our democratic movement. We don't. There are no. We don't have to exclude anybody. Everybody who wants changes, it's our partner. It's part of our big Belarusian team.
Speaking about the changes, the next presidential elections in Belarus are scheduled for January 26, which is in around a week's time. You've urged Belarusians and the international community not to recognize those elections. What are the plans of the United Transnational Cabinet in response to those elections?
I mean, you've even called it a farce at one point.
Yeah, I just wanted to start that we again using the words that are meaningful in democracy, because elections, you understand what elections is, you understand what electoral process, but in the country where absolutely no conditions for elections, where people are threatened to death, where no alternative candidates, only fan club of Lukashenko participating, where no free media, where any locality is punished with 10, 15, 20 years or even death penalty in Belarus. You cannot organize elections. So what is happening in Belarus at the end of January? It's circus, it's farce, imitation. It is like ritual of reappointment of Lukashenko by Lukashenko, nothing else. Just forget about the word election. So that's why there will be no observers, nobody was invited. So how can we talk about elections? This farce that Lukashenko organizing already looks like military operation, because preventive detentions, they're showing on propagandistic TV how they are preparing for this moment. So many KGB, we still have KGB, and policemen on the ground, practicing how they are going to suppress any uprising. So Lukashenko got very deep trauma back in 2020. And he, repressions continue every day in Belarus, but Lukashenko still behaves as if hundreds of thousands are standing in front of his palace. He's afraid of people. He knows that he is not supported by Belarusians. So, of course, we're talking about non-recognition, and I feel full consensus among our democratic partners that there will be no official recognition, because morally everybody understands that Lukashenko is nobody. He doesn't represent Belarus, but you have resolution. You need to have resolution. You need to have official statement. Because in Belarus, it also will not change like anything. After this day of farce, Belarusians will not say, "Oh, okay, Lukashenko came back." No, it will not happen. But how so-called elections are organized in Belarus? People deliberately brought to polling stations because Lukashenko needs nice picture. Look how many people came to vote. Of course, for me, and people will have to do some acts, to do something, to sign something, and we propose people to put this like tick, in front of against everybody. Nobody is going to count the votes. These ballot votes will be ruined like immediately. It always happens in Belarus, but people need to do something. I'm not asking people, to go to the streets, and uprise, because it's not the moment of changes. It will bring nothing new in Belarus. The policy of Lukashenko, of course, will not change. He's selling our country to Russia. He's like ruining our national identity, and it will be the same.
So, taking it as a given that these elections will be rigged, what comes next for Belarus? You've spoken about wanting a democratic transition, but how does this look like in practice in your mind?
To come to the point of transition or changes or possibility of organizing free and fair elections, we have to weaken Lukashenko's regime as much as possible politically, to empty his personal pockets that are filled with Belarusian money, to leave him in this situation of pariah to democratic world. But on the other hand, we have to strengthen Belarusians. We have to strengthen agents of democratic forces, strengthen our civil society, media, just to be really a strong movement. And only in the moment of opportunity, there will be only two alternatives for Belarusian people, for our country. Is somebody very pro-Russian who will continue policy of Lukashenko to subjugate in Belarus to Russia, and democratic opportunity, democratic forces. And at this very moment, we have to make sure that nomenclatura, all these authorities will see that, with Russia nearby, it will be dead end. They don't see Belarus as separate, independent state. They look on Belarus as satellite, and we just really a sovereign nation. We want to develop as we want, and there will be European perspective for Belarus. So, of course, at that moment, we also will need support and assistance and mediation of our powerful democratic allies, I will not name, the countries. So we will have to, at the moment of the most vulnerability of Lukashenko, we'll have to have possibility to come to country. Maybe it will be round table, between representatives of the regime and Belarusian people. Maybe it will be a coup d'etat, maybe internal coup d'etat actually. Hopefully it will be victory of Ukraine that will bring possibility for Belarusians, or something can happen in Russia. So many scenarios can happen, but at that moment we have to be in our strongest position and Lukashenko's regime in the weakest. And that's why our strategy looks like weaken the regime, put as much pressure as possible on the regime, but strengthen Belarusians.
You've said many times that Europe lacks mechanisms for dealing with experienced dictators. Then our question is, what should the international community, and Europe in particular, be doing to support the democratic transition in Belarus?
First of all, it's about consistency. I have already mentioned that it's so important not to change policy regarding the countries like Belarus or Ukraine. Stand with those who need your support and assistance. Believe me, no one fight and no one war in the history hasn't been won when you are alone. We have very strong Belarusian society. Ukrainians are the bravest people and nation ever, but we need help. We cannot win this fights alone. And actually, it's I think it's like obligation of powerful democratic world, to help those who are fighting actually, the evil, the beasts in this world. So what we are waiting for is to be consistent in pressure. It's again about sanctions without derogations, without loopholes, because for many years we saw how sanctions were imposed on Lukashenko's regime, for example, but they found possibilities, to earn money, even more money, avoiding these sanctions. So sanctions without loopholes. Political isolation of Lukashenko's regime. Don't invite anybody pro-regime on different events. Don't allow this regime to spread lie about Belarus. It's of course policy of non-recognition. Again, I want to repeat, assistance to Belarusians to keep us stronger. Strong media, strong civil society, strong human rights defenders will give us a stable ground, to continue the fight. Accountability. It is so important because dictators really feel impunity. The democratic world has so many mechanisms how to bring perpetrators to justice. You have International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice. You have such mechanism as universal jurisdiction. Maybe you have never heard about this. But what we see, these mechanisms don't work properly. Because we as Belarusians, our investigators, we collected so many evidences of Lukashenko regime crimes with names, with the proper articles. It's abuse of Belarusians, it's migration attack on our Western partners. It is abduction of Ukrainian children from occupied territories. It's dragging our country into the war. It's, let's recall hijacking of airplane, it's air piracy. All the proofs, and the special investigation hasn't started yet. Why? Of course, people asking why democratic institutions do not work. And I'm so grateful to Lithuania, small but very brave country, government, that dared actually, to launch referral to International Criminal Court to start investigation. But now, to strengthen this case, we need support, political and legal support of other countries. And I also feel a little bit reluctancy from powerful countries who just who established this institution of justice in the world. Maybe it's lack of bravery. Maybe not. They also don't believe in this institution, and it's frustrating actually because people in Belarus, we are sacrificing lives and freedoms for this. Democratic institutions, for this democracy that was built. And when democracy is not working, or democracy is hesitating or weak, people start asking questions, do we really want this? And I believe in democracy. I truly think that democracy is powerful enough to defeat all the dictators in the world, but I really want politicians, to have to hold values-oriented policy, but not business-oriented policy. And I want people who maybe sometimes criticize in their governments, why do you give so much money, to Ukrainians? Why do you support it, Belarusians? Just we need to leave this money, inside the country. I understand that it's comfort of your life. I understand that you want to forget about all the problems, and concentrate on your personal life. But this approach to these problems, it can bring you to dictatorship as well. To very selfish, attitude to the world. Yeah.
We'll come back to the questions of democracy, sacrifices to maintain it, and external support to promote it. In just a moment, I want to move to the audience to see if there are any questions from the public. The gentleman in the blue sweater. The gentleman will come to you with a microphone.
Yes, thank you for coming here and sharing your experience and your stories. It's really motivating and inspiring. From a position of doing opposition from exile, how do you continue to reach the Belarusians, also amidst all the propaganda that's being spread around the country?
So, first of all, God bless internet. We have possibility to communicate to people in the country safely, in safe way. just if you talk about personal communication. Media is a fantastic instrument. We are using all the possible social networks, to reach different groups of population. People inside the country spread leaflets for pensioners, so people in small villages who don't have access to internet, for example. Our younger generation, they're using mostly like TikTok and Instagram, to explain the situation in understandable manner for young people, because young generation, they will not read articles in newspapers, so we explaining through this means. Telegram is very popular among Belarusians. It's mostly for news. YouTube, of course. YouTube changed the TV in Belarus. Of course, propaganda is also using all these instruments, and what they are doing, they this illegitimate governments, they allow YouTube, internet in Belarus, but they declared all our free media as extremist. And if a person inside the country read this news or put like or comment, and KGB is detecting him or her, this person will be accused of supporting extremism and brought to prison for 10-15 years. So this is the restriction, but believe me, people are so inventive inside the country. They're using two gadgets, one for live and one for reading news. Or when I once was communicating with a rather old woman in Belarus. She lives in a small village, and she said, Sviatlana, we are pretending with other pensioners that we gathering and drinking tea, but we are reading news. Just because these people determination to know the truth, it overcome all the restrictions of the regime, and we see the numbers of people from Belarus, that can be seen in YouTube. We see that majority, 70-80% of all the viewers, they are from Belarus. So people are interested, despite all the attempts of the regime to decrease, the level of interest. People don't believe propaganda anymore. What's also important that people on the ground, they like our intelligence in Belarus. They are like our local journalists. They provide us information what's happening in different enterprises, in different cities. They provide us information, for example, how sanctions are circumvented, about any accidents, for us to broadcast it further. Moreover, we have many informants from the core, from the heart of the regime. People provide us such very sensitive information about how our economy is being militarized, how Lukashenko helping Russia with the different military stuff, buying microchips that are under sanctions in Russia, so helping Russia to continue this war in Ukraine. And of course, we're sharing this information with our partners just to prepare new restrictive measures for the regime. So it's constant communication, between people. So, yeah, I believe me, regime can't deprive people of right to dream and to share and to think of the moment of opportunity.
Thank you.
So we would like to have another question. Someone will come with a microphone. Please, gentlemen, the front row, white shirt.
Hello, thank you very much. You won the previous election in Belarus, which gave you the legitimacy to be the representative of Belarusian people. And this is how Western politicians see you, as a representative of Belarusian people. Do you think that this vision of you will change after the upcoming election, and what do you plan to do about it?
I don't see any eagerness, to to stop supporting democratic movement. There are no even talks that after Lukashenko's new so-called elections, we'll stop talking to Tsikhanouskaya, because our fight, it's not about personalities. It's about reliability of the movement. And I'm not if there is more recognized, person instead of me, I will be only happy, because it's difficult job. But we build such a structure of our democratic movement that is understandable for our partners. We working as these structures. We are embedded into different institutions of Europe with this structure. So I was given mandate, but not only by Belarusians, but also by our democratic allies, to be stable until free and fair elections, happen, because I don't have mandate for 5 years. But until we all together, it's not about me, we all together can bring the moment of free and fair elections close.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we need to move on. Sorry for this. Now we would like to talk with you a bit about the regional dynamics and beyond. So Russia's role in Eastern Europe, and not only, is undeniable. But we are curious to hear, what are some of the key motivations between the Kremlin's continued support of Lukashenko?
Lukashenko and Putin, they have this symbiotic friendship. They need each other at the moment, and they use each other at the moment. We in this relationship were very interesting through all these years, because in winters Lukashenko made friendship with Russia because he needed cheap oil and gas. In the summers he needed some money from Europe, so he made friendship with the Europe. So it was always seesaw. And now they need each other as well. That's why they are allies. Lukashenko needs Putin as a political and economic backup. It's actually Putin who saved Lukashenko back in 2020, because without his support, Lukashenko wouldn't survive politically at all. And Lukashenko actually is ready, to sell our country, our independence, our sovereignty, in exchange of his personal power, because Putin is supporting Lukashenko politically. Lukashenko, or Putin needs Lukashenko as very loyal and very cheap partner. He looks on this economic support of Lukashenko as on military costs and the war costs, and he's providing him some very cheap loans, or some support, just in exchange of using our infrastructure, of using our territory at any moment they need. They use our airspace, they launch missiles that are going through our territory, attacking Ukraine, and they using Belarus as a source of blackmailing of our neighboring countries. They making these Russian-Belarusian drills, making provocations on the borders. They are sending migrants through Russia, through Russia and Belarus, to attack and blackmail Poland and Lithuania. They decided to deploy nuclear weapon in Belarus. Our country is nuclear free, and they decided to deploy just to subjugate Belarus even more, to anchor the presence of Russia in Belarus for many years ahead. And in the case of retaliation attack, it would be on the territory of Belarus, not in Russia. So at the moment, they need each other, but we already see the signs. When this attempt to take Kiev for 3 days failed, and the Ukrainians showed the hugest bravery, we see how Lukashenko, he sometimes he wants, of course, to avoid responsibility for this war crime, and he tries to untie his small boat from big Russian ship, I'm not with him, but of course, he's the same war criminal. So that's why they keeping for each other. They sharing ideas. How to suppress society, how to be a brutal dictator.
On this question of Ukraine, you've mentioned many times that the fate of Ukraine and Belarus are closely intertwined. The incoming administration in the United States has repeatedly indicated, shall we say, a preference for a swift resolution to the war in Ukraine. How do you view this development in relation to the political situation in Belarus?
So first of all, I want to say that Ukrainians have to be given everything possible they need, to win this war. It's not just territories or sovereignty of one country. It's a fight between democratic world and autocracy on the land of Ukraine and Belarus. So it should be like the law, for democratic world. And we need, of course, unity of European Union and the USA and like Canada, other powerful countries in this approach. In the moment of negotiations, it is so much discussed, but not everybody understands, how it will look like. Ukraine has to be in a much stronger position than Russia. And this is, of course, a duty of, not duty, but it's cooperation of Ukraine with the democratic world. But of course, we don't have to underestimate the role of Belarusian land in this geopolitical turbulence. And we talk to our democratic partners that, look, without democratic Belarus, there will be no peace and stability and security in the whole region. Don't, in this negotiation process, Belarusian aspect should be included for sure. Because if we deal with Ukraine and leave Belarus for one day later, we will return to solving a few issues, later, or, Belarus can be given even as cancellation price, to Putin. So it will be constant region of turbulence. From Belarusian territories, when Lukashenko is there, that is supported by Putin, there will be always like source of problems and troubles and blackmailing. So there will be no stability in Europe until Belarus free. So these two issues have to be discussed simultaneously, and we ask our democratic partners, when the process of negotiation will take place, demand withdrawal of Russian troops not only from Ukraine but also from Belarus, including nuclear weapon, and demand not interfering into internal policy of Belarus. We Belarusians do everything rest ourselves, but you can help us to avoid, this creeping occupation that we see at the moment in Belarus. So I want to believe that values in this world, in democratic world, is much more important than realpolitik in this very situation. Because returning again to democracy, dictators, they don't respect democracy because they think democracy is weak, because you are not united, because you're always hesitating, you can't agree, to each other, and they challenge you constantly. They, this hesitance of democracy emboldened dictators. They think that they can cross red line after red line, just challenges what will be your response, what you can do. And I'm absolutely sure that democracy is strong. The problem is that societies, people might be poisoned by propaganda. So it's a real responsibility on ordinary people at the moment, to talk to yourselves, why we should help, why we maybe should sacrifice a little bit of our comfortable life, but to help those who are defending not only themselves, defending all of us. Because the world is changing, dictators are learning from each other, they're making coalitions, they want to split the democratic world, and it's up to us and up to you that it will not happen.
Do you believe that the success of the 2020 Belarusian uprising could have discouraged Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine?
I truly believe that if in 2020 our uprising won with help of democratic world, maybe this full-scale invasion, this war, wouldn't happen at all. Because of course the crucial role of Belarus is the shortest way to Kiev, it was evident. So at that moment in 2020, we didn't know about the plans of Putin to invade Ukraine, but I'm sure they already were there. So that's why Putin supported Lukashenko so much at that moment. So, again, this can be, our land can be used again at any moment, not just regarding Ukraine, but the next aim of imperialistic ambitions of Russia might be Europe. It might be European nations whom also maybe Russia wants to drag into Soviet Union past. So
This story of democratic resilience that we've spoken about today in Belarus, your own personal story, are unique in their own right, but at the same time reflect this universal yearning for freedom. You've been in the fight for freedom for some time now. It's impacted your own and your family's freedom, yet here in the West we take these freedoms for granted. Could you speak a bit about what freedom or lack thereof means to you?
Look, lack of freedom was our normal state in Belarus, till 2020. Lack of freedom is not just when you can't speak freely. It's when you can't find justice. You can't rely on your government. You know that your government is rather punish you than protect you. And remember how in 2020, it was 2019, it was COVID times, and we saw how in other countries, governments wanted to take care of people. Though I understand, not everybody was happy with this, with all those restrictions. But in our country, what regime was saying, showing full respectful relation to Belarusians, that look, do you see COVID? I don't see, so it doesn't exist. If people were dying, regime blamed you yourself guilty that you are dying. It's not our job. And it was maybe the moments of first signs of self-organization of Belarusians when not government were taking care of Belarusians in COVID times with Belarusians. We collected money to buy these COVID tests or to buy these masks, to these gas like oxygen balloons, to save people. And at that moment, maybe this was a huge shift in understanding of people that this government exists not for us, not for country, not for nation, not for people. They exist only for themselves. They take care only about themselves, but simultaneously they suppress us. We don't feel safe in our country. We don't feel free in our country. So, and of course, lack of freedom in maybe in more narrow sense is that you are live in Gulag, in big jail. You don't understand the rules of dictatorship. You don't understand, can you wear red, white socks because you can be detained for this because it's the color of our national flag? Can you say the word stop the war because it's global motto, no wars, you can be detained for this? Can you buy a present for a family or for a child of repressed person because you can be detained for this also for 5 years? Can you sing Ukrainian songs in Ukraine or in Belarus? It looks like no, because we got cases that people were again detained for 2-3 years for song. Can you speak Belarusian language, our national language, our official language? We are also not sure, because we have so many cases that people are detained for speaking Belarusian language. You don't understand, and you are always in stress. You don't understand what you can do, what you can't. Can you leave the country? Can you, get a visa, Schengen visa or not, because KGB will come and will ask, what do you need visa for? Maybe you want to support those extremists abroad. Or when you are returning from abroad, you might be interrogated on the border. Just they're checking your mobiles freely. They have absolutely all rights. This KGB and the MON and policemen search your mobile, and if they don't like something, there may be some picture or straight to jail. You cannot defend yourself at all in Belarus. It's this is what is really a lack of freedom, and this is what democratic people, ordinary people, they can't understand. They can't believe that in the 21st century, in the center of Europe, people can live like this. where you are in prison, for example, you're a political prisoner, you are deprived any rights at all. You are lack of food, you are lack of clothes, you are air, and lawyer is not allowed to visit you. You can't complain. You're beaten constantly. You are humiliated constantly. You are like it's like the real hell in prisons. Like my husband, he is, and some other people, they are kept incommunicado mode. I think you don't even know the word incommunicado, but it means that these people are in full isolation. I haven't heard about my husband. It will be 2 years in March that I haven't heard anything about him, nothing at all. I don't know if he's alive. No, letters are not coming to my children anymore. And this is new type of torturing people. They want to persuade our heroes behind the bars that the world, Belarusians, has forgotten about you. Nobody needs you. Look, nobody's writing to you. Lawyer is not interested how you are. And they want to make to persuade them that the world betrayed them. Nobody's fighting for you.
Well, we haven't forgotten you here in the Netherlands and around the world, and I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. It's been a real honor, a real pleasure, a privilege. Thank you, everybody who turned out today to listen. For those of you who haven't had enough of us yet, this afternoon at 1 p.m. right here we'll be welcoming Tony Murphy, President of the European Court of Auditors, on this stage.
We'll also be continuing our Israel-Palestine series later this month. On the 21st of January, we'll host Nadim Ruhana, and on the 24th of January, Hilal Kohan. Thank you so much, Ms. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. It was a real pleasure. I would like to express my deep admiration for you. It was truly an honor to have you here. Please give the last round of applause for Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya.